Okay, so trotting straight on then. So Mark said something interesting earlier on about being a fat, middle-aged, bald man, not being able to do cosplay. As you can see there, it's true, and my impression of James Bond is pretty awful. I'm Stuart Muckley. I'm the CEO of Codewizards. I won't belittle you by reading out what's on all the slides that are there, but we do game tech and we do esports tech. And really, we work at the back end of games to help games developers, studios and publishers build the game that they want to in co-op and co-dev and basically get it out to market in the way that they want it. We've built a load of tournament platforms. I'm awfully British about this, I'm sorry, so I can't give it a big rah, rah, rah. But as far as we know, we are the global leader in tournament systems that are out there after being building them for the last 7 or 8 years. So the obligatory slide that's here. What do we mean by esports? Well, for us, it's any competitive play, online or physical. As Catherine and Mark both mentioned, this is quite a broad church, really. We got single player games and speed running that's out there. We got multiplayer games, either turn-based, you could have your Hearthstones or whatever else. You can have fast-paced FPSs. There's it's a massive, wide variety of that right there. And then we've got Battle Royale and racing games as well, all of which present different challenges on how you want to build your esports modes, how you want to manage those modes, and what you want to do for the people who are playing the game, because ultimately that's who you're targeting. So one of the phrases that you'll probably hear me use it quite a few times are TO. So TO means tournament operator. And these are the guys that are running the big tournaments and the big events that are out there. So that'll be people like Gfinity or events that Mark and the guys at Heaven Media may run, as well as James and Co at ESL. But there's multiple out there, so I'm not trying to push one brand or another. So as a games developer, you've really got to understand your audience. So as well as the players that are out there, if you want to be at any of these events, you've got challenges which you need to give and you need to help the tournament operator with. So there's just a few things on here. There's loads more, but hopefully it gives you some ideas. So if we're talking about grassroots, so lots of people playing, this is where most game developers start, and hopefully your game is fun to play. That's pretty essential, right? If it's not, it's going to be rubbish and no one's going to want to do it. If we're talking about pro events, pro play, and things that people watch, again, it seems obvious, but it's something that we see time and time again, which isn't catered for. It needs to be fun to watch. Now, that could be silly little things like on the screen, things just aren't obvious what's going on, the different opponents aren't marked out, but all those things really dramatically change the way it is. So you've really got to consider that as part and parcel of it. For tournament operators, running tournaments costs money. They're businesses, they run these things commercially, that's what they need to do. So anything which reduces the amount of humans that are needed to run things has a benefit from a cash perspective, because you don't have to pay people to run this. But more importantly, it means that you can get more games in, which is more fun for people. Those people will come back. Toxicity was mentioned a bit ago, but fairness and cheating are a big part of that as well. Nobody wants to play games in a tournament where somebody's cheating. It's just not right. On the other hand, at most tournaments, if it's a grassroots, I don't want to play something where I get rinsed in the first round and I'm out. That's boring. I want to play. I'm here to play. In a pro event, that might be the exact opposite, though. We need to whittle out the worst players very, very quickly so we can get a more interesting, watchable event at the end. Stability. As developers, we see this time and time again. People run the game and they run it in small silos. They run it locally. It works beautifully on their LAN as developers. It's great. They run it with a bunch of friends that are in the same territory. It's amazing, but it doesn't make it reliable or stable. You've really got to hit those things. We'll come back to managing play and why it's tricky in a little bit, but we'll go through that. The next thing, which a lot of developers don't understand, is that tournament operators don't differentiate by offering different tournament types in the main. They have their own identity and preferences and how they work. So it's interesting and really important that you need to understand what those are when you speak to tournament operators about how they're going to do things and how it's going to go. And lastly, and I think Mark and Catherine both talked to this as well, esports at a pro level and for watching is all about stories. So you've got to make this stuff available so that they can tell these stories. If you think about something like a football match that's going on, as people are commentating at the time, they're not just saying person A passed the ball to person B, wasn't that amazing? They're saying, well, in the last 10 matches, person A hasn't scored any goals, or this is the biggest run he's done, or she was injured for the last 6 matches. So it's all this narrative and stories which go on alongside it, because as humans, we love stories. It's hardwired into us, and esports feeds into exactly that same mechanism. So how do we make a game loved? Well, we've got to make it loved to play. That's obvious, but also people love to be involved. So if we can find a way for tournament operators and the players to be involved in there, then we're on to a winner. This develops a community, everything builds up, they introduce new people to it, so it'll actually acquire new people as well as being a retention mechanism for you and your game. We need to be able to make it easy to organize. So whether it's, me and a bunch of my friends want to play against each other on a Friday evening, or it's ESL is putting on a worldwide event of our game, it needs to be easy to organize. If it's not, they'll go to a different game because they have to. These things have got to be managed, and they're difficult to do at the best of times. So making it as easy as you possibly can for people will massively influence how many tournament operators and people themselves will take on your game. I mentioned the stories and making data visible. So one of my favorite ones on this is Overwatch. If you go to the Overwatch site, you can see a bunch of stuff about each player, how they're playing, what they're doing, etc. It's great. And this is building stories. So by the time I go to play a game, I can go and look how, a colleague of mine like Martin, I can go and see how he plays. I can get a good idea of what it is. I can look at the channels, I can watch his play. All these things build into it. And this is how I'm talking to my friends, and we're enjoying ourselves as well. This also allows the casters and presenters at tournaments to talk about these things, so that they know a lot more about what's going on. So for instance, if I've played Martin 55 times over the last 2 years and I've only won once, that's a brilliant story to tell, So anything that we can make these things visible with will help that massively. Watchable we mentioned before, but I've put it in again because it's just so important, and we see it so often that this is missing. So I mentioned a bit earlier about just making things visible on the screen. There's other things that'll be alongside it as well. How do I understand if it's a win or a loss if I've never played this game and I'm just watching it? How do I understand what's going on within the game? So if there's a drafting system before, what are we drafting for? How are we doing this? And very often, just very simple things like changing the size of the font or adding animations or some kind of description alongside it will massively change how engaging that is. And then tournament types. Everybody in esports used to think about single elimination tournaments. So it was the de facto default for everybody that was out there. So all we need to do is we have a tournament. It's a bracket system that runs. It's a nice big shaped V. A plays B. If A wins, they move on to the next round and B is out. As I mentioned earlier, single elimination is really boring if you turn up for an event and you want to play, because you want to play. You don't want to be out in the first round. So that might be a double elimination instead. So you've got 2 chances before you're out. Or it could be a league. So, just like we have a league out there for football, everyone plays everyone. It's a really interesting way to do it. However, if you're looking at numbers, this is where the parallels between physical sports and electronic sports really breaks down. In physical sports, we can have a football league of 20, 30 different teams playing. Amazing, it's great. We can work it out over a season. If we do that with a league of 50,000 players, that's going to be virtually impossible for everyone to play each other. And so whether you pick a ladder, or it's a leaderboard, or it's a custom system based on lives like a Clash, you've really got to consider what tournament types you want to put in there and what that audience is, because some will be for tournaments and watched events, and others will be the other way around, and they'll be for players playing each other and just enjoying what they want to do with your game. So my bit's all about the tech. That's where we're from. We're a bunch of techies, so hopefully this isn't too boring. There's a bunch of ways to make this much easier for players out there and for tournament operators and the tournament platforms to link into things. So the easiest is a data dump. It's incredibly easy to do. Virtually any game can do this. It won't even impact your team very much as part of the development process. get the data for each of the matches, get the basic public data for each of the players, and just shove them somewhere on a cloud storage. Give them a naming standard so people can find them. So if my identity is tool user, that's awesome. If I go to XYZ URL/tool user, there's the Stuart Muckley profile. Amazing. If it's a team, you could go exactly the same /team/Codewizards. There it is. And you can structure it however you want. People can then use that to pull the data down, sort it, play with it, work out their own league sites, introduce or interact with a tournament platform that's out there. There's a million gazillion things that are going on. So at the very basics, if you want to be if you want to be in the esports arena, data dumps should be your very minimum starting point for it. If you want to go up a level, APIs are awesome. League of Legends is my favorite example for this. They've been pioneering it for ages, and the Riot guys have done a great job. We have an API out there. People can call into it. You get a key so you can manage the amount of access that's going on. You can make sure that nobody's DDoSing you. You can make sure that nobody's abusing your data as well. It's pretty fast to do. All the clouds have got really good support for API, so you can build that. It is going to impact your team a little bit because you have to get that information from somewhere, store it from somewhere, and make it manageable. However, an API makes your game massively more attractive to both tournament operators, tournament platforms, and individuals. The public information website is kind of the mix of the two. This is what I mentioned about Overwatch. A way to look at the profiles for the players that are in there, and the matches and the history, just in a nice, easy to read format, so that even the most casual public person can just go and look at it and see what's there. Integration. So Catherine spoke a bit about the Gfinity platform back there, and it's a great example. So the ideal way to run esports play is that we're heavily integrated. I play a match versus Sam. Sam wins, the system's automatically updated. Sam progresses to the next round. I go into the losers bracket. Awesome. Neither of us had to type anything. It's very hard to cheat, etc. So it's a great way to go. However, if you integrate into one platform, you've got to be really sure that you've got a great deal with them, that you're working forwards, because that's the platform you're going to use for everything. Now, if that's embedded into your game, that's cool. If you're going to be across the world, you need to pick somebody with a global reach that's out there. So, you've got your Gfinities, your ESLs, and a bunch of the others that are out there that can support that. Some of the smaller ones can't. Lastly, for toxicity, user management is something that loads of people always forget. They should be via your live ops system, plug it in there. You can manage users, you can ban people, but you can also suspend them. At all points, we have to remember that a lot of the time that people say things, they don't actually mean it, or, well, sometimes they do, but a lot of the time they don't mean it. So suspending people rather than banning them is a really good mechanism, because it's a slap on the wrist rather than, taking them out of the ecosystem completely. If you look at any of the systems that are out there, EGL is a great example. They've got a great suspension system that's out there, and they use that to great effect to essentially give people warnings and stop them doing things before they actually have to go to the GACs and cut them off and ban them completely. So, internal tech steps. So these are the things that your players don't see, but they're massively important. So matchmaking, it's obvious, right? If you are randomly picking people to play, that's cool for a while and it's great. And if you've got a small community, that's brilliant. However, as things get more competitive, I want more challenging matches. I want to be matched with people where it makes sense. Secondly, it works for both ways. So if I'm a pro player, I don't want to play noobs all the time because I'm just rinsing them. It's over in seconds. What's the point? From the other way around, for noobs, if they're always getting pro players playing against them, or excellent skilled players, it's awful. I'm not actually getting a game. I'm in for 10 seconds and then I'm out immediately. So your matchmaker is really, really important. But the other thing is, if you want tournament operators and people to run their own tournaments within your system, you need some form of private lobbies. Could be as simple as sharing a key with people so they can join. There's a million ways to do this, but you just need some way to do it so that the tournament operators can manage it rather than random people piling in all the time. Cheating. Depending on how serious you're getting about this stuff, things will increase over time. People will find vulnerabilities in your game. People will try and hack it for fun. Two things you can do. So there's anti-cheat solutions out there. You can plug them in. That's great. Work really well. The biggest thing, and I'm not advocating doing this day one for what I'll say on the next slide, server-side authoritative for multiplayer is the way to go. What that means is that none of your game clients are making the decision, so you can't hack a game client and change things massively. The server can manage these things. Reliability, and sorry, I'm going to race through this a bit because I know you've all been listening for a long time and I don't want to bore people. So we've got to build for scale. So there's no point having a bunch of servers out there and no one can get on them. You've got to basically make sure that we have the right amount of servers at any time. We'll come on to that in a second. Why? Reliability. If you sell in-app purchases and skins, etc. within your game, and that is your monetization model, and your game keeps crashing, you will not make money. You have to be reliable. You need to be able to manage things. Things will go wrong, things will crash, sometimes things won't scale. Even though clouds supposedly have infinite capacity, of course they don't. There's physical limits there, so sometimes you'll hit those hard limits, and you need to be able to handle that. So you need a really good command and control setup. You need to be able to manage this. And the last part is visibility. You need to monitor everything, so you know what's going on. If things are crashing and you don't know about it, you can't fix it. Your players will start moaning at you, but they'll moan at you way after the crash has actually occurred and you can do something about it. If you release a patch and there's a problem with it, your players will tell you about it. But again, there's a delay. If you're monitoring carefully, you'll be in there right from the start. Now for the buts. Budget and income are really important things. Yeah, nobody's got an infinite budget as far as I'm aware. I know it'd be beautiful and amazing, but it doesn't really exist. So if you have a multi-season game, my advice is start small, build up. Don't build everything at the start. Don't presume that you know everything. Let the players tell you what's important to them. If that means that you start off with non-authoritative multiplayer at the start and you add that later, that's cool. Get your community moving and, you know, engage with them, tell them what you're doing and how you're changing things. Awesome. They'll love you for it. The next thing is that servers cost money. If you have a server-based model for running your game, it's ideal, it's great. But the amount of times people have told me that they're doing a free-to-play, they're expecting 10,000 concurrent players and they can get 20 people on a server, and you do the maths and they just look at it and start crying. Servers cost real money. So as well as being able to scale, you need to also be able to descale, bring down the number of servers that you've got during the night or for periods where they're not playing, etc. Your money needs to come in before you pay the cloud providers unless you've got a massive cash flow. Most games haven't. Territories and gamer types. This is becoming more and more important as time goes on. Different territories play games in different ways, so they may want different tournament modes that you offer in those areas. If you've got a live ops system and if you've got data around that, you can do that. If you don't, you're guessing, and guessing is bad. You know, we're all full of prejudice and bias around what we think and what we don't think is good or bad about a game. But in reality, we don't know. Data will tell you what you need to know so you can do that. And last of all, the best part of it, I'm going to shut up for a bit. If you need more information or you'd like to speak to us, we always love speaking. We're on the UK Games Slack channel, so you can pick me up directly. Send us an email at Stuart@Codewizards or hello@Codewizards, and we'll pick it up and get back to you. And Sam, I'm going to shut up.
Thanks very much, Stuart. A whistle-stop tour through some very, very complicated things there and all of the different options. If a studio literally just started up, what would be the first sort of 2 or 3 things you'd say to them for them to focus on? I mean, obviously it depends on the scale and what they want to achieve, but is there a sort of a page one starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my number one is always live ops. If you haven't integrated a live ops tool, you know, and you think your game has got longevity, you're crazy. You need to do it now, you know, as quickly as you possibly can. Get it baked in. It costs a lot less to do it at the start than it does at the end. And it'll give you all the switches and dials and levers that you need to make your game awesome. The second thing is, from an esports perspective, you've got to be really self-critical about what kind of modes work for you. So it's great to look at everything else and think it's the same, but if you've got a small community, then leagues are amazing. They're incredibly sticky. Everyone enjoys it. You can get that play, and it really builds community, because the story I'm telling is I'm playing Sam tonight. It's amazing. I'm going to rinse him. It's going to be great. And then Leon tomorrow is going to destroy me. Brilliant. We can go through all that stuff. There's no point having a ladder of 200 people. It's boring. However, when you hit season 2, that ladder might be the way to go. So you've always got to have a projection about where you're going to and when you think you're going to hit it, and design that into the modes. And lastly, you've just got to think of casual play as well. So you've got, this is the hardcore, and this is great. This is fully retained players who get to play on a regular basis. It's great to have something like a Clash Royale kind of mode where you can go in, you can play a bunch of rounds. It's all asynchronous, so it doesn't really matter. But at the end, you know, a bunch of you win and you get a good feeling out of it, and you can launch it as an event. Yeah, and it's just working out what works. But if you're going to hit the if you're going to go to various events, and we're all really hoping they turn up again. I mean, just look at something like Rainbow Six Siege. It's incredible to watch. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's better to watch than play, in my personal opinion, but you can go to one of these events. It's on a big TV screen. You can sit down, you can watch it, and you can have fun. Rocket League's an excellent example of a game where you just get it immediately. You don't need to be told what Rocket League is. It just gives you extra things. So if you play it, it's awesome. If you turn up at the Gfinity Arena, like I did with my son a couple of years back to watch the World Finals, amazing. You know, you'll just go and have fun with it. So it's really understanding where your game is. If it's super complex, watchability is going to be hard. If it's super simple, watchability might be hard, but it's going to be easier to get in there. And it's just trying to find that golden balance between the two. But you'll only get that by showing these player things that are out there and asking them what they think.
Yeah, I mean, the flexibility of systems is so important. And I guess it's changing all the time, isn't it? You're constantly, I guess, getting companies coming to you saying, I want to try something a little bit different. Just have a go. Just experiment and see what sticks. A question came through from Mark, actually, that I think you've answered, but let's just check you have. He asked how important APIs can be, and you did reference that. You're very positive about what Riot have done. What's the significance of APIs?
So this is my personal belief, but I think we're moving into, you know, esports 2.0. We've been through all the traditional modes which are based on physical sports, and we're now just about to enter the next era of esports. So in the previous era, people typed in their results. So I'm going to pick on Catherine. I play Catherine, and at the end of it, we both type our results. And if they concur, that's cool. And if they don't, one of us has to provide a screenshot. You know, that's pretty awful, really, as an experience. That really, really sucks. APIs solve that problem because it means that we can integrate directly. So players can do what they want to do, which is get on with the business of playing, and tournament operators can do what they want to do, which is get on with the tournament and get it running. So they're massively important. But also from a data perspective, I mean, if you look at community sites based around, I mean, Riot, you know, the classic example, there's a million out there about League of Legends, tracking different aspects that they find most interesting. And it also allows for this kind of esports 2.0 variability. So, you know, we've seen things like Fortnite matches where the winners are no longer based on who actually comes first, but who gets the most headshots. So it really allows you to mix and play around with the game in ways that were never intended and give a different experience with a different kind of sub game within the game.
That makes sense. That's perfect.